Hi, my name is Cassie Bailey and I serve as the Dean of Students, and I am excited today to bring you everything academics, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all of your questions about how things work academically for your new student at Baker. So let's get started with a quick overview for today. Please know that after orientation is done, we do have a follow-up email that goes to all families and will be part of this website as well, with follow-up information and links to the different topics that we talked today about. Additionally, for our students who are on campus today or during their orientation visit, we will have majors as home. We feel like it's really important for our students who know what their majors are to start getting to know our great faculty and the resources that are available not only in the physical space, but also in those wonderful meetings and relationships that they have with faculty. At the end of the day, we will also have a time for students to ask more questions. And obviously we won't have that through this PowerPoint that I'm showing you today, but please know that I invite you to ask us questions at any time during your experience at Baker. Let's move forward. So, what I would first ask students to do during this time is to look at their academic schedule. For those students who attend orientation, they would have an academic schedule within their folder. And I want to tell you about some of the main courses that we have at Baker. The very first one being the Baker Experience course. We call it also BK 100, and you'll hear us talk about it or reference it in several ways like that. This is our Welcome to College, Welcome to Baker course. It is during the fall semester. It is considered to be a graduation requirement, but it's a class that won't have so much of an academic emphasis as more of an orientation emphasis. That's not to say that grades aren't assigned. In fact, they are. And a student's attendance to this class and participation in the class is mandatory, at least if they want to pass, which we all hope they do. The next section, so every student should have a BK 100 class if they are a freshman new student. If they're a transfer student, we'll get to that in a second. The second part of this is our Quest sections. And Quest is how Baker University delivers our general education program. We have 4 pillars that are repeated over and over and over again through each of our Quest classes. That is oral communication, written communication, information literacy, and critical thinking. Those 4 pillars are repeated for 80% of the courses. The other 20% happens to going to whatever the class topic is. So there are various topics that we offer to deliver this. Some of them are about Harry Potter. I teach a class about how to have critical conversations with others. I also teach another class about how to be happy. So again, that 20% is just your topic-based, and we have 80% that goes back to do the oral, the written, the information literacy, and critical thinking. We like to think of Quest as a spiral. So if we look at our spiral here, what we'll notice is that Quest will start off with 101 and 102. I call these baby Quest, if you will. And as we move up through the spiral and we continue to do those 4 pillars over and over again, we continue to get better and better. So for Quest 102, I might ask students to do a 5-page paper with 6 sources that they have found that have passed the test for information literacy. As they move up through the spiral and get to 401, then we're asking students to do 30-page papers, maybe with 25 resources. In other words, we ask students to build their skill sets all the way up. We call this a threaded experience because we ask students to do 6 semesters of this spiraling Quest time. If we have transfer students, what we do is we combine the Baker experience with Quest, making it QS 231. So Quest 101, which will be on the majority of our student schedules, is worth 3 credits, 2 credits for Baker experience, and for our students who are coming in as transfer students, Quest 231 will be worth 3 hours. Another graduation requirement of Baker is to make sure we have proficiencies done. I'm first going to talk about our written communication proficiencies. If a student has an ACT of 20 or above and an SAT of 480 or above, this means, and that's for that English section, that means that they are finished with proficiency 1 of our English or written communication. If a student has below those numbers, then we're going to ask them to do English 100, so it would show up as EN 100, and that's going to be required in the first semester. So it's basic composition. If your student has below a 20 or below a 480, but they have taken a college level credit and bring it in, transfer it in, like a comp course from another university, and they have a C or above, they also do that proficiency. So once again, with our proficiencies, you have a chance to meet that by doing your ACT or your SAT, having a C or above in a college level course, or taking EN 100, basic composition, during the first semester. Another proficiency for us is what we call our world language proficiency. And a student can reach those proficiencies in a variety of ways. If a student has taken 4 years of high school world language, so that would be French, Spanish, German, Chinese, etc., if it's of the same language, then they have received that proficiency and do not need to do any more through their experience at Baker, although we do welcome them to. If a student has transferred in a course and has a C- or above, so in other words, if they took a course through a community college or another university and they have passed it with their C or above, they have met that proficiency. Or if the student is an international student and the native language is not English, then we will also accept that proficiency. Remember that proficiencies can be done within the 4 or 5 years of their time at Baker. Just needs to be completed before they graduate. Lastly, let me get into our math proficiencies, which has Proficiency 1 and Proficiency 2. Proficiency 1 can be met with an ACT of 22 or above in math, or by a 500 or above in math. If a student does not come in with that, then a student must do Math 090 in their first or second semester, or if they feel like, gosh, I'm a really great student in math, I just really didn't do well in my ACT, they can take a math placement exam and test out of that math course. So students do have a variety of ways to do this. We do math placement exams throughout our first week of the school year so that we can appropriately place students either in that course or out of that course. Once level 1 is accomplished for our proficiencies, we would move to level 2. And a level 2 student would be able to take college algebra, statistics, quantitative analysis, research design, but it's not an exhaustive list. We have several classes that meet our math level 2. And oftentimes those courses are also designed within the major. So if I'm a business student, I know I'm already going to have to take quantitative analysis. So I don't have to do another course on top of that. And that's how our student would accomplish level 2. Additionally at Baker, we have what is called exploration courses. So what we don't want to happen is that for a student to come to a liberal arts college or institution and only take one type of course. We want them to have a little bit of a dab in everything. Remember, liberal arts means that it is a breadth of education, not just a depth. So for all of our students, we ask them to do an understanding, and that's why we have the letter U. We don't expect for anybody to become proficient during these courses, but to have an understanding of either physical universe, history of ideas, social, political, economic, or creative expressions. And so a student is going to take a course in each one of those. You might be asking, what happened to U2, U3, U6, U7? And what I would tell you is that those are blended into some of our other courses. And so when a student takes maybe one of their Quest classes or a class for their major, those are just blended in. In fact, for our Baker 100 course for all freshmen, U2 is blended into that course. So a student might not know that they're getting that information, but they are, in fulfilling that graduation requirement. The other thing for students to know is that we do have an interterm. So we have a fall semester and we have a spring semester. And what we ask for students to do is either a January interterm or a summer interterm. And these are 13 days. The fun thing about that is that this is a great time for students to either travel abroad, travel around the country, or stay on ground. Most of the time, if not all of the time, our classes are not catalog classes. In other words, there's a time to do something fun. So in the past, we've done courses such as stained glass, So students for 13 days, that's as long as interterm is, have a chance to work on stained glass projects. Sometimes we have students plays. In other words, that for 13 days they work really hard and then they present a play for us to do. And that includes stage setup, the acting, etc., the advertisement of that. And just for those 13 days, the 13th day being the play. I've had a chance to teach on both leadership skills as well as personal safety. Please note that freshmen, anybody who's considered to be a freshman status student, they must complete 2 successful interterms. And again, that can be in January or the summer. Transfer students with 30 hours or more that they're transferring in only have to complete 1. Oftentimes families ask me, oh my goodness, how much more is this going to cost me? And I can tell you that interterm is free. There is no cost for the room or the board or the class as long as it's online. If a student does a travel interterm, and we have some amazing travel interterms, Costa Rica, Jamaica, Africa, South America. If there is something of a travel interterm that's involved, then yes, there will be cost for the travel, but for no more. Another thing that may be on your student's schedule is what we call an activity course. An activity course would be something that you would have as a scholarship-based course. So if your student is receiving a scholarship for music, they should see that class listed on their syllabus. Or for mass media, arts, newspaper, theater, or athletics. Please note that if your student is a spring athlete, that'll show up on the spring course assignment. So we're talking about fall sports. Maybe that'd be cross country, football, wrestling, I think is a fall sport. All of those different areas, right? These are considered to be on there. If your student plays what you consider to be a fall sport and you do not see it, soccer would be another one, please make sure that we are aware so that we can give your student credit for that. Again, these are individual to the scholarship. So if your student has received a scholarship, they should have that kind of course based on to their schedule. So the other thing I would want you to know is that if your student plans ahead, and my daughter, she's a planner, let me tell you, and so I know what it's like to work with those kinds of students, please know that we do have a checklist for both our majors and our minors. And those are available for students to be able to do those, go through them, see where they overlaps, etc. Again, students will have an opportunity to hear more about that as their department at home meeting, or majors as home meeting. We also cover all of this within our Baker Experience 100 course. We'll be able to provide those as hard copies for our students. If they're kind of vacillating between 2 different majors or 2 different minors, we have something called the Majors Fair that will happen at the beginning of October. The students can also get the checklist for all of those. If your student has a transcript, so your student has already taken English 100 someplace and needs to transfer that in, we are happy to work with you, especially before the semester starts. So if you'll notice in your student's folder, there is a green sheet. And in that sheet tells us how to do transcripts. If you're watching this from at home and you don't have a student with you there to look at their folder, you can also find that on the registrar's website. Remember, when you turn in a transcript, it must be official. It cannot be a photograph of one, can't be a copy of one, etc. It must come from the university. This is evaluated by our registrar's office, called a transfer equivalency guide, and credits are given that way. Some other things to know for your student. 12 credit hours makes a full-time student. We recommend typically that a student stays between 14, 15, or 16 hours so that they can be academically progressing, but 12 credits is our minimum. A student can go all the way up to 18 credits before they have to pay extra for a course. And so that's a great way, that 15, 14, 15, 16, to stay on track. Please note that by the end of May, so between August and May, if you have a student athlete, they must earn 24 Baker credit hours. Those have to be credit hours from Baker, so it's not credit hours that have transferred in. Lastly, on this page, you'll notice the statuses. So if a freshman is 1 or 0 to 29, a sophomore status would be 30 to 63. Junior status is 64 to 97, and senior status is 98 and above. One must have at least 128 credit hours to graduate from Baker University. to some examples really quick so that we can look to see how this would work out. The first example I want to present to you is a student who is not an athlete, who has not met Proficiency 1. And you'll remember Proficiency 1 was that you could either do that by making the ACT or the SAT score or taking MA 090. I want to show you what their schedule would look like because it is unique. If the student is signed up for 15 credit hours for fall, which is great, we're so happy for that student, and one of those credit hours happens to be MA 090, Math 090. Math 090 is considered to be a remedial course, and that's why it starts with the number 0. As it is a number 0, it is not seen as a full-time credit for our NAIA schools. Those all have to be 100 level and above. For Baker, we will see it as part of your credit load for financial aid, but we don't see it as part of your credit load toward graduation. So for this student example, taking 15 credits successfully completes the 3 hours of MA 090, but somewhere along the way drops another 3 credits. So you might be doing the math yourself saying, well, 15 minus 3 equals 12. Why does she have 9? It's because remember, this course is seen as remedial and therefore only counts toward 9 credits toward graduation. The same student takes 2 credits during interterm. And so now the student is up to 11 credits toward graduation. And this is assuming that the student passes those successfully. Finally, the student takes 15 credits at the end of spring semester, or for spring semester, passes all 15. That means the student has 26 hours by the end of May. So the question is the student a freshman or sophomore? They've just completed their freshman year with 26 credit hours. For those of you who said sophomore, you're correct. 30 makes a sophomore. It's okay to not be at sophomore level for your second year. You have time to catch up. Additionally, if your student brings any concurrent courses or transferred courses in, those transfer courses can't be used for the NAIA rules of 24, but automatically apply to make that student from a freshman to a sophomore. Let's look at our next example. Here's a student who is an athlete and the math proficiency has not been met. So although our screen says not an athlete, this actually happens to be an athlete. So 15 credits for the fall, as we had seen before, drops the 3 credits, bring it down to 12. MA 090 is successfully completed. This means the student has 9 credits toward the graduation and 9 credits toward NAIA eligibility. And the reason why it's not 12 is, once again, the student has taken a remedial math course. The student takes 2 credits during interterm, bringing it to 11 credits. And then for spring 2018, the students are going to need a certain amount of credits for NAIA eligibility. So if we know they need 24 credits for NAIA eligibility, and they only have 11 here, that means they must take 13 for that spring. Now, if you're confused, and it's a lot of reason to be confused with so much information, please know that there are several of us on campus who can help your student explain this, whether it be their coach, my office, academic advising, as well as their BK 100 instructor. And that leads us to the end of Everything Academics. Again, this is a very confusing part, but what we want you to know is that this hopefully has been helpful to you, as well as any questions that we can answer. We would love to do so. Thanks so much for your time and have a good one.